Emily Parker woke up on the morning of her wedding day with a flutter of excitement in her chest. The sun was shining through the large windows of her penthouse suite, casting a warm glow on the elegant bridal gown hanging nearby. It was a custom-made dress with intricate lace details and a long train designed to make her feel like a princess. Today was supposed to be the culmination of all her dreams, a day she had envisioned since she was a little girl. Emily's bridesmaids bustled around her, ensuring every detail was perfect. Her makeup was flawless, her hair styled in a sophisticated updo adorned with a sparkling tiara. The venue, one of the most exclusive hotels in Manhattan, was decorated to perfection with thousands of white roses, crystal chandeliers, and gold accents that reflected the couple's refined taste. As Emily slipped into her dress, she couldn't help but think about how far she had come. She had met Michael Parker 3 years earlier at a charity gala. He was everything she had ever wanted in a partner: handsome, successful, and kind. A partner at a prestigious law firm, Michael was well respected in their social circles, and his proposal had been nothing short of a fairy tale. The guests were beginning to arrive, a mix of family, friends, and high-profile figures from New York's elite. Emily's parents were beaming with pride, and everything was going according to plan. The orchestra played softly in the background as guests took their seats in the grand ballroom, which had been transformed into a romantic wonderland with cascading floral arrangements and twinkling lights. As the ceremony began, Emily walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her heart pounding with excitement. Michael stood at the altar, looking dashing in his tailored tuxedo. Their eyes met, and Emily felt a rush of love and anticipation. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. But just as the officiant began to speak, the doors to the ballroom burst open with a loud bang, causing everyone to turn their heads in shock. A tall, well-dressed man stormed into the room, his face set with determination. Emily's heart skipped a beat, and she felt a cold wave of dread wash over her. The man's presence was imposing, and there was an air of authority about him that commanded attention. He walked straight down the aisle, ignoring the murmurs and gasps from the guests. Emily could barely comprehend what was happening as the man stopped right in front of her and Michael. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said, his voice steady and calm, "but this wedding can't continue." The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Emily's mind raced as she tried to make sense of the situation. Who was this man, and why was he here? She glanced at Michael, who had gone pale, his eyes wide with shock. "Michael, you can't do this," the man continued, his voice now tinged with emotion. "You can't marry her, not when you're in love with me." The words hung in the air like a bombshell. Emily felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under her. The man, who introduced himself as Ryan, claimed to be Michael's lover. He spoke with such conviction that there was no room for doubt. The room erupted in chaos, with guests whispering and gasping in disbelief. Emily was frozen, unable to process what was happening. Her dream wedding was unraveling before her eyes. She turned to Michael, her voice trembling. "Is this true?" Michael stammered, his face contorted with guilt and fear. "Emily, I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought I could move on, but you're in love with him?" Emily whispered, her voice breaking. Tears welled up in her eyes as the realization of her shattered dreams hit her like a tidal wave. The man she loved, the man she had trusted with her heart, had been lying to her all along. She could see it now, the hesitation in Michael's eyes, the moments when he seemed distant, all the red flags she had ignored. Ryan stepped forward, trying to reach for Michael, but Emily recoiled, stepping back. She couldn't bear the sight of the two of them together. Her perfect wedding day had turned into a nightmare, a public humiliation that she would never live down. Without another word, Emily turned and ran down the aisle, her wedding dress trailing behind her. She didn't know where she was going. She just needed to escape the suffocating pain and betrayal that threatened to consume her. The guests were left in stunned silence, unsure of what to do. Michael stood there, torn between his love for Ryan and the devastation he had caused Emily. Ryan, too, looked conflicted, his presence having shattered the illusion of a perfect day. As Emily fled the hotel, her world in ruins, the rain began to fall, mirroring the storm that had just erupted in her life. The fairy tale was over, and all that was left was a painful reality she hadn't been prepared for. The days following the disastrous wedding were a blur for Emily. She locked herself in her penthouse, refusing to see anyone, drowning in a sea of emotions. Anger, betrayal, and sorrow swirled around her like a storm she couldn't escape. The news of her wedding fiasco spread rapidly, becoming the talk of New York's elite. Gossip columns and social media buzzed with speculation and rumors, turning her private heartbreak into a public spectacle. Michael's attempts to contact her were relentless. He sent flowers, messages, and even tried to visit her, but Emily refused to let him in. She couldn't bear to face him, the man who had promised her a future, but had secretly harbored a life she knew nothing about. The man who had broken her heart in front of the entire city. Emily's phone buzzed constantly with notifications, friends reaching out in concern, journalists fishing for a statement, and strangers offering unsolicited advice. She felt suffocated, as if the walls of her luxurious penthouse were closing in on her. She needed answers, closure, and most of all, she needed to understand how everything had gone so wrong. A week after the wedding, Emily finally mustered the strength to confront Michael. She agreed to meet him in the quiet, neutral setting of Central Park, where they had often taken long walks together, planning their future. But this time, there was no talk of the future, only the heavy weight of the past. Michael arrived looking haggard, dark circles under his eyes, and a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. He sat beside Emily on a bench, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "Why?" Emily finally asked, her voice small and broken. "Why did you do this to me?" Michael looked at her, pain evident in his eyes. "Emily, I never wanted to hurt you. I love you, I really do. But Ryan was a part of my life that I thought I could leave behind. I was wrong." "Part of your life?" Emily's voice rose, anger replacing the sadness. "You were having an affair, Michael. You were lying to me, to everyone, and you let me believe that we had something real." Michael took a deep breath, his hands trembling. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. Ryan and we were together before I met you. It was intense, but when I met you, I thought I could move on, that I could have the life I always wanted. But I never fully let go of him. We kept in touch, and it got complicated." "Complicated?" Emily scoffed, her disbelief turning into fury. "You humiliated me in front of everyone I know. You destroyed everything we had. How could you do that to me?" Michael couldn't meet her gaze. "I thought I could have both, but I was wrong. Ryan, he couldn't stand to see me with you. He thought I was using you to hide what we had. And maybe he was right. I tried to convince myself that I could love you both, but I was lying to everyone, especially myself." Emily stared at him, her heart breaking all over again. The man she had fallen in love with was a stranger, someone who had deceived her from the beginning. "So what now?" she asked, her voice tinged with bitterness. "You choose him, and I'm just supposed to accept that?" Michael reached out to touch her hand, but she pulled away. "I don't know what I want," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I care about you, Emily, but I can't deny my feelings for Ryan. I'm so sorry." Emily felt a cold numbness spreading through her. She had loved Michael with all her heart, and now he was telling her that she had never been enough, that their relationship had always been built on a foundation of lies. The days that followed were even darker. Emily hired a private investigator, driven by a desperate need to understand the full extent of Michael's betrayal. What the investigator uncovered was even more shocking than Emily had anticipated. He unearthed a series of hidden secrets, financial transactions, private meetings, and a second apartment in Chelsea where Michael had been meeting Ryan regularly. It became clear that Michael had been living a double life, using his relationship with Emily as a cover for his continued affair with Ryan. But the most devastating revelation came when the investigator handed Emily a file containing photos and documents showing that Michael had been planning to leave her even before the wedding. There were emails between Michael and Ryan discussing how to handle the situation, with Ryan pushing for Michael to break things off with Emily. Her world crumbled as she realized her entire relationship with Michael had been a lie. The man she thought she knew had never truly existed. Every sweet word, every loving gesture, had been part of a carefully constructed facade. The betrayal cut deeper than she had ever imagined, and Emily's grief turned to rage. She became consumed with thoughts of revenge, unable to think about anything other than making Michael and Ryan pay for what they had done to her. Her once bright future had been stolen, leaving her with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal. Emily's friends and family noticed the change in her. She became withdrawn, obsessed with tracking Michael and Ryan's every move. She began drinking heavily, numbing the pain that gnawed at her soul. Her once perfect life was in shambles, and she felt like a ghost of the woman she had once been. As the weeks passed, Emily's anger festered, growing darker and more twisted. She began to hatch a plan, one that would ensure that Michael and Ryan would never hurt anyone else the way they had hurt her. The idea of vengeance consumed her, filling the void left by her broken heart. And so, with cold determination, Emily set her plan in motion, knowing that there was no turning back. The love she had once felt for Michael had turned into a burning hatred, and she was prepared to do whatever it took to make them pay. As Emily delved deeper into her obsession, the line between right and wrong blurred. The darkness within her grew. She was no longer the innocent bride whose wedding day had been ruined. She was now a woman scorned, ready to unleash a storm no one would see coming. Emily's transformation from a heartbroken bride to a woman consumed by revenge was complete. The person who once believed in love, trust, and happily ever afters had disappeared, replaced by someone hardened by betrayal and humiliation. The pain of what they had done to her festered, warping her mind and driving her to the brink of madness. The private investigator continued feeding her information about Michael and Ryan's activities. Emily knew about every secret rendezvous, every whispered conversation. She began following them herself, carefully planning her next move. She watched them from a distance, taking note of their routines, habits, and the places they frequented. Emily was meticulous, her mind sharp with a singular focus: revenge. The opportunity came on a cold, rainy evening in late November. Michael and Ryan had planned a weekend getaway to a secluded cabin in the Catskills, a place they had once visited during their clandestine affair. Emily knew about the trip thanks to the investigators' detailed reports. This was her chance, her moment to confront them both, away from the prying eyes of the city. Emily rented a car under a fake name and followed them to the cabin, driving carefully to avoid suspicion. As she navigated the winding, tree-lined roads, adrenaline coursed through her veins. She was nervous, but there was a dark resolve in her heart that overpowered any fear she might have felt. The closer she got to the cabin, the more determined she became. She couldn't back out now. This was the only way to end the torment that had consumed her. When she arrived, Emily parked a short distance away, hidden among the trees. The rain was coming down harder now, droplets pelting the car like tiny bullets. She sat for a moment, her hands gripping the steering wheel, mentally preparing herself for what she was about to do. There was no room for hesitation. She reached into her purse and pulled out the gun she had purchased a few days earlier. It was small but deadly, a .38 caliber revolver that fit snugly in her hand. Emily had never fired a gun before, but she had spent hours at a shooting range, learning how to handle it. She knew exactly how to aim, how to pull the trigger, and how to ensure that each shot counted. She was ready. Emily stepped out of the car, the cold rain instantly soaking through her coat. She moved quickly and quietly toward the cabin. The lights were on inside, casting a warm glow through the windows, but the sound of the rain drowned out any noise she made as she approached. She could see Michael and Ryan sitting by the fireplace, their silhouettes framed by flickering flames. They looked relaxed, unaware that their past was about to catch up with them in the most brutal way. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she reached the front door. She paused for a moment, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts. This was it. She raised her hand, clutching the revolver, and knocked on the door. There was a moment of silence, then footsteps approached. It was Ryan who opened the door, a look of confusion crossing his face when he saw her standing there, drenched and holding a gun. "Emily," he said, his voice tinged with both surprise and fear. "What are you doing here?" Michael appeared behind Ryan, his face turning ashen when he saw the gun in her hand. "Emily, put the gun down," he said slowly, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. "Let's talk about this." "Talk?" Emily's voice trembled with a mixture of rage and despair. "You want to talk now after everything you've done?" Ryan stepped forward, trying to calm her down. "Emily, please, we never wanted to hurt you. I know it's hard, but we can figure this out." Figure this out, Emily repeated, her voice rising. You ruined my life, both of you. I was nothing to you, just a pawn in your sick game. Michael moved to stand in front of Ryan, shielding him. Emily, please, you don't have to do this. I'm sorry for what I did. I never meant for it to go this far. But Emily was beyond reason. The months of pain and humiliation had pushed her to the edge, and there was no turning back. You both lied to me, manipulated me, made a fool out of me, she said, her voice trembling with fury. And now you expect me to just walk away? No, I'm not going to let you get away with it. Before Michael or Ryan could react, Emily raised the gun and fired. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the cabin, drowning out the rain. Michael fell to the ground, clutching his chest, blood spreading rapidly across his shirt. Ryan screamed and lunged at Emily, but she was too quick. She fired again, the bullet hitting him squarely in the chest. Ryan stumbled backward, falling to the floor beside Michael. The two men lay there, blood pooling around them as their lives slowly ebbed away. Emily stood over them, the gun still in her hand, her breathing ragged. She felt a strange mix of emotions, satisfaction, horror, and an overwhelming sense of emptiness. The revenge she had sought for so long was finally complete, but it didn't bring the closure she had hoped for. Instead, it left her feeling hollow, a shell of the person she once was. As the reality of what she had done sank in, Emily dropped the gun and fell to her knees beside the bodies of the two men she had loved and hated. The rain continued to pour outside, the sound mingling with her sobs as she realized that her life was now irrevocably shattered. In the days that followed, the media erupted with the news of the double murder. The story of Emily Parker, the jilted bride who had taken matters into her own hands, became a sensation. The trial was a spectacle, with every detail of her tragic story laid bare for the world to see. The jury found her guilty of double homicide, and she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As Emily sat in her prison cell, the weight of her actions pressed down on her like a crushing burden. The revenge that had driven her to this point had destroyed not only the lives of Michael and Ryan, but her own as well. She had become a monster, consumed by her own pain and anger, and now she would spend the rest of her days paying for it.